Bitcoin follows a 4-year cycle. Basically, it's going to be 2 years up, 2 years down. It goes up a little bit. Another year goes up a hell of a lot. Next year crashes a hell of a lot. Next year it goes down a little bit, starts the cycle. So it's just horseshoe after horseshoe after horseshoe, but it's not flat. It's horseshoe after horseshoe after horseshoe. That's the cycle it's going to take.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Shaqir Show. Today I'm super pumped because I have Mr. Max Wright from Success Council. Guys, this guy is an investor. He got into Bitcoin early. He's an entrepreneur. He's sold his last company. I actually have been following this gentleman for close to nearly 10 years since I was a brand new, what they call a newbie, when I was starting my entrepreneurial journey. And then I remember meeting him at a live event. It was an exclusive mastermind that I was in. The people had to spend around $10,000 to $12,000 just to attend this live event. And I remember seeing Max get on stage, and this is before, you know, the 2017 Bitcoin craze. This is before like everyone jumping into Bitcoin. He was on stage talking about Bitcoin. And I remember thinking to myself, I've heard of that. Who is this guy? And so I've been following his YouTube videos for a long time. I am a big fan of him. And I hope that after this session, you also go and subscribe to him on YouTube. You'll find all the links below this video. And so I'm super pumped. Max, you ready? You ready to rock?
I'm ready to go. And I think, by the way, if my memory serves, this event was in Costa Rica. I think it was before the 2013 Bitcoin craze. So there was a 2013 Bitcoin craze and there was a 2017 Bitcoin craze. I think it was before the 2013 one.
Wow. So it was a long time ago. That's
yeah. I think I was on stage teaching people about Bitcoin when Bitcoin was about $15.
Wow. So I'm going to get straight into it. I'm going to check my phone because I have questions written out. This one's very prepared. So anyway, in terms of basically, let's just talk a little bit about your background and how you stumbled across Bitcoin and why you are just an avid supporter of this, you know, currency basically.
Sure. So, for whatever it's worth, I'm a self-taught economist. And I have a passion for history, philosophy, and economics, and I've just always been into that. And so I ended up, after the 2008 financial crisis, I realized that every single thing that all the governments around the world were doing to try and help were actually making things much, much worse. And that what they were going to do was to create another massive bubble. And when that bubble crashed, it would be even worse than when the 2008 bubble crashed. So I started teaching, I created an online course, started teaching people about how to prepare for that, what it's going to look like, how to do that. And so I've been, researching for, over a decade about how to actually plan for that. Now, the crux of the problem, if I can, is that governments print money. If I could say it in a handful of words, governments print money. And what they print money and they control money. So we do not have when people think we live in the West, you live in a free market. You don't. 1/2 of every transaction in the Western world is money. We don't barter anymore. It's not, here, you give me a potato and I'll give you a fry pan or something like that. We trade with money, which means half of the transaction going back and forth is money. The problem is that money is not free market money. The problem is the government decrees what money you have to use. They do that by making you pay taxes in that currency. And then, so in addition to telling you what currency to use, they also control the supply and price of that money. The amount of money in circulation is created by government or pseudo-government entities all around the world. And the price of that money, that's the interest rate, that's set by a team of bureaucrats at the Federal Reserve or the European Bank or the Royal Bank, I think it's called in England. And so those things are set by bureaucrats and they're not part of the free market. Every time you have this centrally planned nonsense, you move away from free market, you move towards, I would argue, tyranny, but you move towards this central planning. You're moving towards the socialist/communist end of the spectrum. And you get all kinds of distortions in the market. And so to sum it up in a few words, that is the crux of all of our problems, If you have a look, the number one reason why the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer, it's not because of a failure of capitalism. It is because we no longer have capitalism. It's because government has taken over control of the primary thing, money. Now, to put that on a spectrum, if you can have complete over here, let's go to laissez-faire, free market economics, there's just basically no government. It's Rafferty's rules. It's like a complete free market system. Compare it over here to a complete totalitarian, tyrannical system, communism, fascism, Nazism, socialism, right? This is the spectrum. Well, when you have half of every single transaction being used as a commodity called cash, currency, and that currency is completely set by bureaucrats, the price of it, the quantity of it, whether or not you use it or not, you are past 50% of the way on that spectrum. You're well on you're way down here. So don't think you live in a free society. You don't. In addition to that, in most countries around the world, healthcare, education, military, other huge industrial areas, huge parts of the economy are also centrally planned. Now, the problem is we've just been heading in this direction more and more and more and more. We said like socialism always fails. Yes, it does. Just it takes, sometimes it takes decades, sometimes it takes years, sometimes it takes a whole bunch of things. We are well down that path of complete and utter failure. And 2008 was a big shot across the bow. It was like a wake-up call for a lot of people. So the problem is the currency. And that problem is going to permeate a complete collapse in the system. This coronavirus thing, this is a pin that pricked the bubble. Bubbles find a pin no matter what. Coronavirus come across, it wasn't just a pin shutting down the economy for 6, 12 months, 2 years, however long they plan doing it to us. This is not a pin that pricks the bubble. This is a shotgun that pricks the bubble. And there is a massive change coming up. Now, I didn't know about Corona 5 years ago, 10 years ago when you first heard me talking about Bitcoin, but I knew that the bubble would find a pin. That's 100%. Certainly, they always do. And basically, the premise of why I got so involved in Bitcoin. So originally, I was involved in gold and silver, and I still am. When history shows, when governments have access to a currency they can print into oblivion, they always do every time without exception. There's never once been a time they have not. So I knew they were going to destroy the currency. That was a given. But what we're seeing now, and so I thought, we'll just go back to gold and silver. And then this thing, Bitcoin, came out. And I recognized it as something very, very special very, very quickly. And it has a whole bunch of traits, and we can compare it to gold and silver all day long, and I can talk about it for days. But really, it comes down to one thing. When the system starts falling apart, let's just visit Venezuela for a second. As the system starts falling apart, the government's cracked down on all these rules. For example, in Venezuela right now, you can go to jail if you print the inflation rate. If you publish a newsletter, a pamphlet, email, if you print the inflation rate, you'll go to jail. Right? You're not allowed to talk about inflation because it highlights that they're destroying the currency. So the lengths they go to maintain power as the system crumbles, and you've got to study your history. Look at the Roman Empire, look at the Weimar Republic, look at the currency collapses in Argentina. I studied all of these things. They all follow the exact same pattern. And the amount of control and tyranny, and we've got to control every aspect of your life. Now they control whether or not we can go outside, whether or not we wear masks. They want to control every aspect of society, trying to keep everything together. They can't beat it. The free market forces eventually overwhelm any kind of tyranny, and it will collapse. But when you understand the lengths they will go to keep the system together, you understand exactly what's going to happen in the very final steps. So I mentioned gold and silver as an obvious choice. So they did it in America during the 30s, the Great Depression. The Great Depression starts, huge collapse. Now, it was a gold-backed currency anyway, but they had printed money. The value of gold was going to go up, but that was a government decree. They couldn't do that. So what they did was they forced American citizens to sell all their gold to the government at a set price. Then immediately after it was done, they revalued gold to nearly double. And so it was effective confiscating the wealth of the citizens. And what they do is they will shut down. Gold has a fatal flaw, in my opinion, a fatal flaw, in that it is not censorship resistant. At the end of the day, when things are crumbling, men with guns will come and take gold out of the vaults, out of all the vaults all in the country. All right, the army will come, the police will come. It'll be a national decree. For the sake of the nation, we've got to do this. And it all gets stolen. Bitcoin has this special, incredible property that it is censorship resistant. they can't, you can have it in your head. You can remember a phrase in your head and you have access to billions of dollars if that's how much money you've got. You can have it written on a piece of paper, and you can have it, you can have it written in 3 different continents. And no matter, as long as you get to one of those continents, you can access your money. And you can go through a border, no metal detector can see it. You can have it on a flash drive encrypted. It's like, what's on that? Okay, you can take it, but I've got the backup. If you just think it's a normal flash drive, a normal hard drive, unless you want to confiscate everyone's computer, they can still have it digitally. So it has this incredible property of being censorship resistant. And so what you find is in these latter stages of the collapse, when they come in and say, well, give us your gold, give us your silver, we're going to take everything off of everyone, like they do in every tyrannical collapse. Like they did it in the USSR, they did it in Venezuela, they're going to do it everywhere. And it's as hard as it is to believe it happens, it's going to happen in the First World too. And when that happens, if you have something that they can't confiscate, you're going to be an unbelievable winner. And so I think the rise in price of Bitcoin over the last 10 years is just the beginning, but it's occurring because of the grand awakening that people are having as more and more people understand what fractional reserve banking is, what fiat currency is, what these things are. And I just remember, there's times I've been talking about it and mentioned those words. People are like, what the hell are you talking about?
Yeah.
And then I remember in 2008, 9, 10, 11, I would be sitting in a coffee shop or a cafe and I'd hear people talking about fractional reserve banking on the next table. I was like, what? And there was this big awakening in 2008. It kind of got quiet again because times were good again and the system got glued back together and all things are good. The next shutter to the system comes here, and it was in 2020. And all of a sudden people are talking about it again. And I can tell so many more people understand it. And that's been a big part of Bitcoin's growth. And it's probably its got 2 incredible things going for it, like gifts to humanity. One, it's this thing that has been built that is there. If the society ever wants to use it, we can go use it. And we will want to use it like much more so very, very soon. But 2, it's caused a mass awakening in education. You've got all these current Bitcoin owners who are massively incentivized to teach other people about Bitcoin. And so we're making free courses, we're making videos at YouTube's, we're doing interviews, and we're spreading the word about why this is an important thing. And in that journey, we have to explain Federal Reserve, fractional reserve banking, fiat currency, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that has just been, you don't learn that stuff at school. You don't learn it at school for a very good reason. The government does not want you to know about those things. But because of the Bitcoin community largely, and the gold and silver community, and these kinds of things, so many more people know about it and understand about it. And that's why there's this continuous flow of people to acquire Bitcoin in preparation for what's coming.
Well, I feel like you and I could just sit and just talk all day. And then we could do seminars, all day long seminars on this. In terms of, you got cracking on with Bitcoin at what? $15, you are teaching, you are sharing the message at $15.
Mm-hmm.
When you see, and again, I'm only saying this for the audience. I've obviously studied this for a few years now. But when you see back $15 and it was going up and down, a lot of the times people will say, but isn't it going to crash? Like I've got a lot of what we call high ticket clients, right? People that buy high ticket courses and programs. And it's funny because I always want to bring up the conversation of, cryptocurrencies and just Bitcoin. And they'll say stuff like, oh, they bought it when it was 20K and it crashed and they sold.
Mm-hmm.
How have you managed to stomach all the ups and downs? When you got in like 10 years ago, or whatever,
mm-hmm.
did you have that mentality like, this is it, I'm in it for the long run? Or like, what was your mindset towards that?
Well, 100% I was in it for the long run. That's true. But I also was pretty smart about when I was buying, and I didn't buy at the peaks. To give your users your viewers a little bit of a heads up, Bitcoin follows a 4-year cycle. And basically it's going to be 2 years up, 2 years down. And it goes up a little bit. Another year goes up a hell of a lot. Next year crashes a hell of a lot. Next year it goes down a little bit, starts the cycle. So it's just horseshoe after horseshoe after horseshoe, but it's not flat. It's horseshoe after horseshoe after horseshoe. That's the cycle it's going to take. And if you just look at a map, it literally, or a look at the Bitcoin price, it literally jumps off the page at you. It's extremely obvious. It's probably going to be a little bit too technical for me to go into why that 4-year cycle happens. But trust me, the 4-year cycle happens. And so I kind of was aware of that and teaching it very, very early on, which is why I've been able to be so ridiculously successful with my predictions. And I think you mentioned just before we turned the camera on, I've just got a whole bunch of videos on YouTube predicting the price of Bitcoin in like 2 years time. It's just like outrageous predictions. Like, it's going to go up 20 times in like the next 18 months. And it does. And people are like, how'd that guy know? What's going on? It's like, it's actually rather simple once you know how it's going to work. And so I have never actually bought in any of those times where it just went like that big crash here where it goes from like 20,000 down to like 3,000. I've never bought in that period. I've never done that. So I've never had to suffer it. But advice that I can give to other people: A, buy at the right times, but that's easier said than done. We all want to do that, of course, but not everyone manages to do it. But two, you don't need to bet the farm on this. Right? This is not, if you're sweating bullets at night, you're doing this wrong. Don't do that. Like, don't bet next month's rent on Bitcoin. Don't do that. This is, it is a very risky investment. It is a very volatile investment. Don't invest money that you can't afford to lose. This needs to be money that if you lose it, you're going to be fine. And that's going to take a lot of the sweats away from you.
What would you recommend? I mean, this is not financial advice, but let's just say you are talking to a friend in terms of, if they had a $1 million portfolio or even 100K, what sort of percentage would you say, hey, chuck it into Bitcoin and keep it there for the next 10 years?
So, I mean, this is entirely it's a personality thing. It is a risk management thing. And is $1 million the sum total of their portfolio? If they had $1 million, all right, if you have $1 million to invest, let's just say you had a windfall, $1 million windfall, and you had zero. Your net worth before that $1 million was nothing. You had nothing. So all you've got is $1 million. Here's what I would do. What I would do is I would probably put half in Bitcoin, a quarter in silver, and a quarter I would leave in cash at the moment. That is about what I would do.
What about gold?
I wouldn't buy. I love gold. I own gold. I'm not buying gold right now. So gold and silver, they correlate very highly, and so I just put them in the precious metals category. Now, within the precious metals category, that's an important bucket for me. That's an important place to have some money. It's a real good savior, right? And I definitely want some assets allocated to the bucket of precious metals. What I buy at any given one time depends on the gold-silver ratio. If the gold-silver ratio falls like down below like sort of 45, 50, I'm probably only going to buy gold. If the gold-silver ratio is between like 40 and 60, 65, I might buy myself a little bit of a mix. If the gold-silver ratio is above 60, 65, I'm only going to buy silver. And that ratio is just literally the price per ounce of gold divided by the price per ounce of silver, and you get yourself a ratio. Simple as that. So right now, I'd be buying silver, not gold.
And is that specific silver coins, silver bars, or silver mining stocks, gold mining stocks?
I don't own any mining stocks in gold, silver, or anything else. In fact, I don't own any stocks, period. And I'm not against the principle. Like, I'm not a hater on stocks. It's just not my domain. I haven't spent much time in that world. So I'm talking about bullion, straight up bullion. I don't care if it's round coins, solid bars. I don't care the form it's in, as long as it is some kind of bullion. You don't want to pay a premium for a fancy coin with a fancy date on it or a fancy picture. They're called numismatics, and they have a higher premium based on some collector value. Don't pay that. Just the cheapest per ounce you can get. That's the stuff I recommend.
Next, okay, so let's have some fun with the predictions, okay? Because obviously, one of the reasons why I followed you for so many years, and friends and family that I say, hey, go and follow Max and Success Cancel. For many years, I've seen you do these predictions, and it sounds really ridiculous, but you've been right on so many times. And I'll actually link below to some of your videos, and you just have to see some of the comments people post, right? What's right now, Bitcoin's at what? 10,200, I think this morning I checked, right? 10,100 or 10,200. and it is right now September 9th, 2020. Next 12 months, next 36 months, 1 to 3 years. What's your prediction?
Well, those are very different, 1 to 3 years. So let's just say.
Oh, I meant 1 year and then
And then 3 years.
this time.
Okay, 1 year from today, I'm pretty confident Bitcoin will go up 10x. So 1,000% return. Remember I mentioned the 4-year cycle? 2013, mega year, went from $10 to $1,200. It went from $12 to $1,200, 100x in that 12 months. 2017, I think in December we were at like 1,000. I think if I remember like New Year's Day we were at like 1,000, and it finished off the year at 20,000, right? So that was a 20x. But it also, before going to 1,000, it had a good run up the year before. So you could probably say that went up about 50x over about 18 months. So that one was a little bit elongated. And then in a year's time from now, I'm predicting that we will be over 100,000 Bitcoin. And I'll say this, that, put my name on that all day long. I have another much bigger Bitcoin price prediction, but it's contingent on something which I think is likely to happen, but not 100%. I think Bitcoin will be at $500,000 per Bitcoin by Christmas next year.
Next year?
Yes. So we are talking 15 months away. As I look at that, I can't even believe it myself. It's like, that is a ridiculous, ludicrous prediction. How could that possibly be the case? I'm not even kidding you.
Yeah.
But here's the catch. This is contingent. This is contingent on something which I believe is more likely to happen than not. I believe that sometime in the next 18 months, we will see a major bank institution failure in the Western world. So the type that will not be bailed out, but bail in. Can I catch you guys up on what that means?
Yeah.
So in 2013, in Cyprus, you guys may remember there was a banking crisis. What happened was the two biggest banks in the country, Saturday morning comes out, they make an announcement on television. The two biggest banks in the country are insolvent. They're not going to open on Monday. And the vast majority of the citizens didn't have access to any money. For 3 weeks, all ATMs were closed. All banks were closed. You couldn't transfer money. You couldn't even do an online transfer from bank account to bank account. Our entire money system stopped. After about 3 weeks, they did a deal with the European Central Bank. There was going to be some bailout. There was going to be a little bit of mixture of things. But the big thing that happened was they said, okay, the bank owes a lot of depositors money. The banks have a certain amount of assets on its books, which is not sufficient. So what we're going to do is everybody who's got money in the bank, your bank account gets chopped in half. Done. If you had $1 million in the bank, you've now got $500,000 in the bank. Everyone's bank account got chopped in half. It was called a bail-in. Prior to that, in 2008, what they did all over the world was they did a bailout. What that means is the government prints a whole bunch of money, gives it to the bank. Voila, the bank was too big to fail. We've rescued the economy. And now the bank is not insolvent because we just gave it all the cash. But what that bailout means, the money, they steal the money from taxpayers or their children who have to pay it back many years later and give it to the banks. And now you didn't lose your money as a depositor. That was a bailout. Cyprus changed the model to a bail-in. And they said, okay, we're not going to punish the taxpayers. We're going to punish the depositors. And so the depositors' bank account went from X to half X. Now, in the following subsequent years of the G20s and the G8s and all the summits and all the conversations, when you look at all their summary notes, etc., they liked that model. It was a good model. They like it. They changed all the laws all over the world: America, Canada, Europe, Britain. They changed the laws everywhere. The laws are on the books. They can do something like that now. I believe that with all the lockdowns, especially, but even without the lockdowns, with the popping of the bubble of the last 12 years, we are going to see in a first world Western country a decent sized economy. And my prediction is it will come from somewhere in Europe. Could be Germany, could be Spain, could be Italy, could be wherever, right? In a major first world country, in the Western world, we are going to see a bail-in. which means the money in your bank account gets chopped in half. When that happens, if that happens, you will see Bitcoin and precious metals within weeks double, triple, quadruple. They will just go ballistic because you just don't feel safe with your money in the bank anymore. Why would you? And to finish off the Cyprus story, if I could, so 3 years later, your account got chopped in half. What's the first thing you want to do with the half they let you keep? Get it the hell out of the banks, right? They knew that that's what they would. Everyone would think that. They couldn't do that, or the bank would be insolvent again. So the half that you're allowed to keep, you couldn't withdraw more than 100 euros a day for. I don't know if it could still be in place, or maybe it's expired. I haven't followed up on that. But for years, you still couldn't get access to the half that you got to keep. So when you have that situation, when people say, well, hang on, if people can't get money, how come they can't buy Bitcoin, so they can't bid up the price of Bitcoin? Why would the price of Bitcoin go up? The answer is, if you hold Bitcoin and you see that, are you selling for cash to put in your bank? All of a sudden, the Bitcoin holders, they're like, keeping it, not selling it, not giving it to anyone.
Yeah.
Except for a premium. You know, give me your house. Now I'll buy Bitcoin. Give me your apartment building. Now I'll buy Bitcoin. I'll sell you my Bitcoin. The price of Bitcoin will skyrocket, as will precious metals, if that happens. And I believe it is a more likely than not chance that it will happen in the next 18 months.
Yeah, I want to add something to that, right? Like, one of the reasons why I do these calls is, one, I have a super high-end mastermind group, Sheepmastermind.com, and these are like people from all over the world. They want to learn how to make money, but they also want to learn how to protect and grow the money. When I was young, I'm talking when I was younger, and I was a little bit, you know, I was making money. I've been very fortunate from some people would call an early age. I was just making a lot of money. And I remember the whole incident in Cyprus. Okay, now Cyprus is very close to where I live. Okay, and I had a bank there. And I had put a lot of money, well over 6 figures cash. And I remember going to Cyprus the day after I got married, okay? I went to the bank and they flat out told me, there is no money. There is no money, you can't get it. And I'm like, I mean, I don't want to tell you what I said and how I felt at that time, but let's just say that punch in the gut is not something any of you, I really do not want anyone to ever experience that. I mean, just think about it. I get married. The next day, I take my wife to Cyprus, and we're talking to this lady, and, you know, I had a Louis Vuitton backpack on, right? And she looks at me, and she looks at my wife, and she goes, you guys are young. You can go and make more money. And I was like thinking, what are you talking about? Like, this is my money. This is my hard-earned money. And she goes, you guys are young, you can go make money. There have been people that don't have grocery money coming, basically crying to get money from the banks. But this bank, you know, I don't know which bank you're talking about, but let's just say these banks, right? They didn't just like give everyone a haircut. They took money out and that's it. They just locked it up. Whatever they did.
And you never got it back?
Never got it back. Well over 6 figures cash.
Wow.
Never got it back. I hired a legal team, a fancy hotshot lawyer, you know, and I remember speaking to him as well. I mean, I paid him a bunch of money to go and get me my money back. And he said, just like the way it's structured, it's just, it's messy. You know what I mean? And so for me, it's like, you know, when you get slapped in the face really hard, then you're like, I don't want to get slapped again. For me, that was like, I was like, okay, now I need to really learn about how this whole economy works and how business and, you know, business is one where, you know, or even if people are in a 9-to-5 job or whatever, and you're getting some sort of income, but what is actual income? Like, what is actual cash? And where did cash come from? And the fact that there's nothing that backs cash as well. Yeah, we could have a whole different conversation about those things.
Well, I mean, just how it can change lives. Check out this story. So there was a gentleman from Australia, which is where I grew up in Australia. And there's a lot of Greeks there and Greek Cypriots. In fact, one of my best friends in high school and elementary school was a Greek Cypriot. But anyway, there was a gentleman there who was just retirement. He lived in Melbourne, actually, I think, for the vast majority of his life. He was a Greek Cypriot. And he sold socks in the markets. Like he gets up, 3:30 a.m. every morning selling socks in the markets. And he hit retirement. He'd saved up like $1 million. He sold his house, had $1 million cash, transferred it to Cyprus, was sitting there waiting to close on a property. He was going to buy his retirement house there and just live in Cyprus for the remainder of his days. And before he could close on the property, but after he'd sent his money to Cyprus, his account gets chopped in half, can't close on the property. And this guy's retirement just destroyed, all because he happened to have his cash in the wrong bank at the wrong minute. And so, yeah, I mean, this is life-changing stuff. And when that happens in a first world, and like that's in Cyprus, could kind of get forgotten about. That can't happen here. That'll never happen where I live. No, it can, and I suspect it will.
Yeah, and I don't want to say I'm a financial expert. This is why I bring on experts like you. But if someone is in that stage now where they have bank accounts in different countries or whatever, or they do banking in one country, which is like, by the way, there's nothing illegal having multiple banks in multiple countries, right? Sometimes people are a little bit scared of having different companies. If you, again, get your own financial, legal, professional advice and all of that. But in your case, like what sort of advice could you give to someone if they have, this whole thing of 5 flags, 4 flags theory, you should have where you live different, bank different, company different. What's your perspective on that? What's something that you could shed from your expertise?
Let me tie in 2 things here, if I may. One, I mentioned earlier that the greatest thing about Bitcoin is that it's censorship resistant. Followed closely behind that is that there is no third party. So the problem was, in the Cyprus example, your money was in a bank. The bank has control of your money. They then lend it out to people to buy houses and things like that. And it's their job to get you a little return on that money, etc. And that is a third party. And so that is a risk. What if there is bad management at that third party and they go bankrupt? Well, what happens is Cyprus happens. So the other amazing thing about both precious metals and Bitcoin, you own a...
By the way, sorry, that's what they said. They said, when I asked, hey, where's my money? It came down to basically there's bad management. And I'm like, whoa, like this, I thought this is a bank. How can you manage like billions of dollars? But that was the crux, was it? It was bad management and you lost out. So off you go.
Yep.
And literally security guards escorted us out.
Yeah. Can totally happen. With precious metals, you own a gold coin, a silver coin. There's no third party. You can take that and sell it at a variety of different places in your local city, probably. And if there was a banking crisis, probably in a lot more places. Bitcoin has the same thing. You don't rely on anything else. You don't rely on anything. You have your coins. You don't have to ask permission from the bank to withdraw it. There's no one else managing it. You keep the coins you can keep it on a hard drive. You can keep it on a piece of paper. You can keep it in your head. You can keep them anywhere. So the fact that is a very, very important component of both precious metals and Bitcoin. There is no third-party custodian, no third-party risk. To your question, talked about 5 flag theory. So 5 flag theory, there's a mentality out there that governments treat visitors better than citizens. And this is generally speaking true. So if in America it's called the IRS, but the taxing authority in whatever country you're in, if they ever suspect you're not paying taxes or anything like that, at least in America, there's stories all over the place. They just come in, seize all your bank accounts. You can't access any money. And now you've got to go and hire a lawyer without any money to figure out how to unwind their accusations, whether they're true or not. In order to defend yourself, you haven't got the money to hire a lawyer to do anything. The IRS just comes and seizes everything. Well, if your money is in a foreign bank account, they tend to, especially the countries that you would choose, things like Singapore or something like that, they tend to treat foreign customers very, very well because they have a reputation of treating foreign customers very well. And if they start taking money out of people's bank accounts without very, very, very good reasons, they're going to lose a lot of customers. So the theory is you have citizenship and residency in residency in one country. You can even have citizenship somewhere else. Is if something happens to you, your home country can petition to have you brought back, something like that. You can have your bank accounts somewhere else, and you're right. There are 5 flags. So there's citizenship, residency, bank accounts, investments is the 4th, and there's a 5th which I can't quite remember. And they're saying that makes you a lot more robust, and things like that. I take it a little step further. What I do is I actually have wealth in multiple different continents and countries. So I can actually, if things go real pear-shaped real fast, all I've got to do is get across the border with nothing but the clothes on my back, and I don't end up, a penniless refugee. I can actually go and get myself established somewhere in a new place. So that's another concept that gets into this, that you have assets in multiple jurisdictions.
Yeah, thanks for that insight. I have a couple of real fast ones. Okay, will we see a gold standard being introduced? I'm a big fan of Mike Maloney for the last decade. I met him actually in Singapore, which is really cool. He's really cool even in person. He talks about this gold standard. What's your perspective on that?
So there's 2 schools of thought on this. One is that in order to rebuild, once a lot of these bankrupt governments and currencies go belly up, in order to reinstill confidence, they will introduce a gold standard, because people are not going to be once bitten, twice shy. They're not going to fall for another fiat currency. So to define that word, fiat means by decree. And what it means is the government tells you what money to use. Here, you're going to use US dollars, or you're going to use the British pound, or you're going to use whatever it is I'm giving to you. By decree, they make you use it, and that's why it has value. But at the end of the day, it's a piece of paper. You could print them at home for pennies, right? And print a $100 note for a couple of pennies, and all of a sudden you're rich. But no, that's counterfeit. You know all the reasons why. That's what fiat currency is. If several countries or all of the countries around the world collapse the fiat currency, getting people to use another fiat currency, maybe this one issued by the United Nations, or the World Bank, maybe that could get people to trust that. But probably you're going to be once bitten, twice shy. You're not going to fall for that nonsense. So people are suggesting what they would try to do, what they would love to do, is just create another fiat currency that they can abuse. But we might not be silly enough to fall for that. And so they might have to say, we're going to give you a gold-backed currency. And so, we'll maybe confiscate people's gold. Maybe the central banks will just have enough gold. Gold has to be revalued at that point to, not $2,000 an ounce, but $15,000, $20,000 an ounce, maybe $50,000 an ounce. And then you can have a gold-backed currency. So that's one argument. The other argument is they're just going to give you here's a new currency from the World Bank that has purchasing power. We've saved the day. And then the cycle repeats and we fall for a fiat currency again and have our quality of life stolen by central bankers. So they're the 2 arguments. And then there's a third argument which says, Bitcoin and cryptocurrency will be the new currency. And I tend to be in that camp, because yes, there needs to be a gold-backed currency. You're sure that would be a huge improvement, but the problem is it's not censorship resistant. And so they can say, here, use our new currency at the United Nations or the World Bank. Let's go ahead and use that. And a lot of people say, no, we're going to use gold and silver. And they're going to say, no, you can't do that. That'll be bad for terrorists. That'll be bad for this, that we can't tax you properly. So from now on, anyone having gold is banned. We're going to send out men with guns to confiscate all the gold. That's a possibility, and they'll force you to use this currency. But never in history have they had a censorship-resistant alternative like Bitcoin and blockchain solutions, and there's nothing to confiscate. It's in the air. It's in the ether. And so there's a third argument which says maybe that enough people will resist the tyranny of that, and they will just use Bitcoin. And we've got places like Venezuela and Cyprus as examples. In both of those locations, when the currency collapsed, when the banking failures hit, Bitcoin use absolutely exploded there.
Wow. Max, I want to respect your time. I think we're definitely going to have to do a round 2 very soon. Man, thank you so much for this. If you're listening to this on the Shaqir Show podcast or on YouTube channel or whatever, make sure you go and listen to this again and again. Like, this is one of those rare gem of an interview that you need to be listening again and again. Max, where can people find you? I know you're doing a class, which I'm going to link to, an upcoming free web class. I'm going to link to that. But where can people find you? Just successcancel.com.
Yeah, so the website I use is successcouncil.com, and you can see me there. But really, I am most active on YouTube. But once a year, I do this thing. I come out of retirement and I do what I call the Great Wealth Transfer online training. And that just so happens to be this time of year. As you said, you can put a link in it below. It's me in front of a whiteboard, and I just map out exactly what's going on, how it all works. And it really is life-changing stuff. So I highly recommend. It's completely free. Go and check that out. It'll be it'll be one of the links in the description, probably the first link. And so check that out as a first port of call. And when you do that, you'll get to hear more of my message and a greater understanding of what's going on. And there's also a free newsletter where you can keep abreast of what I'm doing there.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate it. Thanks a lot. You guys, check the links below. Leave me a review on the YouTube channel and on the podcast. And I shall be speaking to you all soon. Max, thanks a lot, buddy.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Welcome to the stage with 2 economical exports.